Assalamualaikum and salam sejahtera everyone. My name is Muhammad Alif and I'll be presenting the introduction. Starting with understanding that the Malaysia's labour market has a long history of dependency towards the low-skilled workers. The workers are mostly found in key sectors such as manufacturing, agriculture and services. According to the Department of Statistics Malaysia 2023, about 27% of the national workforce is considered a low-skilled workers. It shows that a large portion of our workforce is involved in jobs that may be vulnerable to salary fluctuation. As a response towards the growing issues, the government introduced the minimum wage policy in 2013. The aim was to reduce the income inequality and raise the workers' productivity. The policy started with a minimum wage of 900 ringgit in Peninsular Malaysia and 800 ringgit in Sabah and Sarawak. Since then, it has been reviewed several times, and by 2025, the minimum wage is set at 1,700 ringgit nationwide, and this is stated by the Ministry of Human Resources 2022. The initiative also supports the Malaysia visions of becoming a high-income nation as stated in the 12 Malaysia plans. However, while the policy does has good intentions, there are challenges to consider. When the wages increase, the employers, especially in labour-heavy industries, may face a higher labour cost. The situation can lead to a fewer job opportunities or more reliance on machines. A good example is a company named Top Glove, a large manufacturing company that has invested in automation to manage the rising of the labor cost according to the annual report by Top Glove 2022. Another challenge is faced by a small and medium-sized businesses which called SMEs. The companies which covers around 97.4% of all businesses in Malaysia. According to a 2022 survey by the Federation of Malaysian Manufacturers, nearly 45% of SMEs reported difficulties in adjusting to the new wage level. Some of them may cut down on hiring or reduce the employees' benefits as an effect on the situation. So, the big question is, does the minimum wage policy helps in raising the incomes without causing more unemployment? Is this a unique problem only in Malaysia or is it something faced globally? The study aims to dive deep into the questions by reviewing the policy history, comparing it with the other countries and suggesting ways to make it more effective.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is AMYZA AZIANA binti AZMAN and I will present about the minimum wage policy in Malaysia. The minimum wage policy in Malaysia was introduced to ensure that workers receive fair and sufficient wage to meet the basic cost of living. First implemented in 2030 under the National Wage Consultative Council Act 2011, the policy marked a significant step towards social justice and the economic equity for low-income earners. The primary objective of the policy are to reduce income inequality, improve the living standard of workers, and to stimulate domestic economic growth by increasing purchasing power. Initially, the minimum wage was set at 900 for Peninsular Malaysia and 800 for the Sabah and Sarawak. Over time, the rate has been reversed upward, with the most recent adjustment in 2022 setting at the minimum wage at 1,500 across all states. The policy covers full-time, part-time, and temporary workers in the both and the public sector. It is applicable nationwide, including Peninsular Malaysia, Sabah, and Sarawak, with the standardized rates since 2022 revision. Employers are legally required to pay at least the minimum wage currently set at 1,500 per month. However, there are some exceptions. Certain categories such as domestic helper and intern program under the training program may not be fully covered under the same wage rule. Additionally, informal sector workers and those in a small or unregistered businesses often face challenges in wage enforcement. Overall, the coverage of minimum wage policy is extensive, aims to protect the right of most workers in Malaysia. Continued monitoring and strict enforcement are essential to ensure that all liable workers benefit from the policy.
Assalamualaikum and hello everyone. My name is FATIN AZILA binti SAAD. Now I will continue my presentation part issues problem. For minimum wage policy causes unintended consequences for low-skilled workers and SMEs. While Malaysia minimum wage aims to raise living standard, it also causes problems such as job losses among low-skilled workers, financial pressure on SMEs, increased automation and reliance on foreign labour, and lastly, skill mismatch and unequal wage protection. Malaysia minimum wage policy aims to improve low-skilled workers' income. However, it has created several challenges. Job losses and reduced hiring. Some employers, especially small businesses, struggle to afford the higher wage. This led to fewer hires, layoff, or shorter working hours. SME struggles. Small and medium enterprise SME, which mark up 97.4% of businesses, face financial pressure. A survey by FMM found 45% of SME had trouble maintaining staff due to wage costs. Increased automation. To cut costs, many companies now automate jobs. While it boosts efficiency, it reduces demand for low-skilled workers, foreign and undocumented workers. Some firms hire undocumented labour to avoid paying minimum wage. This reduces job opportunities for local and lead to unfair labour practice. Living costs versus real income. Higher wage don't always improve living standard, especially in cities, due to inflation and rising costs. Skill mismatch. Many low-skilled workers lack training. Without upskilling, they may not be productive enough to justify highest pay, leading to unemployment. While the policy aims to improve welfare, it brings side effects like job losses, pressure on SME, increased automation, and a growing skill gap. This shows the need support measure alongside wage increase. That's all from me. Next, I will pass the next presenter. Thank you.
Thank you to my friend for the explanation before. Hello and hi everyone. My name is HARTINI binti AWANG. Now I would like to present about international evidence on minimum wage policy. Welcome to this section on international evidence on minimum wage policy. We'll explore examples from countries like the US, Germany and others, focusing on how this policy affects low-skilled workers. The chart shows wage increase percentages, with Germany at 41% and the US at 30%. This is crucial for Malaysia as we consider our own minimum wage policy and what we can learn to balance income growth with job security. Let's dive into the details. Let's start with the United States, where the minimum wage is $7.25 per hour, with plan to raise to $15 by 2025 to reduce poverty for 1.3 million people. However, this will cost 1.3 million jobs and In Seattle, less skilled workers saw 6.9% drop in hours. Net Germany raised wage from €8.50 in 2015 to €12 by 2022. Helping for millions low-paid workers with minimal job losses by improving efficiency or raising price. Finally, UK's £10.42 hourly wage for those over 23 boasts hospitality workers earning with few job losses, thanks to gradual increases. For Malaysia, this example highlights the trade-off and strategies we can consider. Now, let's look at Indonesia, where provincial wage ranges from 540 to 1,320 monthly, reducing poverty but causing textile job losses as employers turn to automation or informal workers. South Africa, 5 and 60 hourly wage since 2019 help farm and domestic workers, but small businesses struggle, leading to job losses. For Malaysia, these lessons are key. We can raise wage gradually like the UK and Germany, offer skill training as in Indonesia to counter automation, and support SME with subsidy like South Africa. Programs like HRD, COPS and TVETs can also upskill our workforce, especially in manufacturing. So, what happened in Malaysia with our minimum wage policy? It's bring better income for B40 workers, raising living standards and reducing poverty, aligning with the 12 Malaysia plans. However, small companies face higher costs, with 45% of SMEs struggle with tight margin. Automation is growing, replacing low-skilled jobs with machines, as seen at Top Globe. Some workers remain unpaid, especially in the informal sector, and employers hire cheaper foreign or unregulated labor to cut costs. This challenge highlights the need for careful planning. To address these implications, Malaysia should focus on training with digital skills, green jobs, and TVETs to upskill workers for industry needs and future jobs. We also support SME with wage subsidy and tax help to keep them competitive. Gradual wage increase will prevent short to small firms, giving them time to adjust. Finally, government, companies, and workers must collaborate, joint planning, ensure a fair and sustainable policy. This step can make our minimum wage policy a success. To wrap up, Malaysia must balance wage growth with job security. Learning from global examples, investing in training through TVETs and supporting SMEs with subsidy are critical steps. Collaboration between government, company and workers will ensure a sustainable policy. Let's apply this lesson to build stronger and fairer labour market by 2025. Now I will pass the presentation to the next presenter. Thank you.
Hi, my name is MENDRINAH EDIN and my student ID is 2023867578. I will continue to present the policy recommendation in impact of minimum wage on unemployment among low-skilled workers in Malaysia. The impact of minimum wage policy on unemployment among low-skilled workers in Malaysia is a subject ongoing debate with both positive and negative outcome observed depending on the context and methodology used. However, there are several policy recommendations in order to overcome the problem of the minimum wage on unemployment among low-skilled workers in Malaysia, such as training skill and targeted subsidy. The implementation of skill training among workers is important to increase the employability and productivity of low-skilled workers so that the value to employers matches or exceeds the minimum wage. Skill training helps the minimum wage increase labor costs, which may lead some employers to reduce hiring. The improvement of workforce development and skill training program is the first and the most important suggestions because their output might not keep up with growing wage flow. Low-skilled workers are frequently the most at risk of automations, layoff, and underemployment. These workers can gain new skills that improve their employability and support better pay by having access to organized industry-level training. The foundation for this type of training in Malaysia has already been established by the government-run organizations like HRD, Corporation, and TVET, Technical and Vocational Education and Training.
Furthermore, skill training needs to be accessible and inclusive, particularly for the workers in the informal sector in a rural area who might not have access and traditional education courses. In order to guarantee that the skill staff correspond with the actual industry demands, training programs should also entail close cooperation with the companies. Next, I will explain about targeted subsidy. Targeted subsidy are financial assistance or incentive provided by the government to specific groups such as low-income households, vulnerable workers, or business in debt. The goal is to support those who are most in need without spending resources on those who don't require assistance. Targeted subsidy function as to reduce the cost of hiring low-skilled workers for employees without reducing workers' take-home pay, such as wage subsidy, where the government pays part of the wage of low-skilled workers, and also by implementation of employment tax credit, where the employers get tax relief of hiring disadvantaged groups. Other than that, hiring incentive is a direct granted the companies, especially employing youths, women, or those in rural area, that really helps to overcome this impact wage policy among low skill of workers. In Malaysia, the past few years of pandemic COVID-19 has really affected by the people. The government implementation wage subsidy program, which is program subsidi upah during the COVID-19 pandemic, helped the employers retain low-income workers, and this eased the financial burden on employers and prevent the layoff during period of economic slowdown caused by the COVID-19 restrictions such as lockdowns. In addition to salary subsidies, tax credit and employment incentive work to promote the hiring underrepresented groups, including young people, women going back to work, and people with disability. This incentive can increase labor market participation and economic security for individual needs while reducing the perceived risk of employers hiring underrepresented or inexperienced groups. To prevent abuse and maximize social impact, it is also critical to make sure that these subsidies are open.
Hi, Assalamualaikum. Good day to everyone. My name is NURUL HIDAYAH binti Muhammad JAILANI. Now, I would like to conclude our discussion on the impact of the minimum wage policy on low-skilled workers in Malaysia. To begin with, the minimum wage policy has brought some positive outcomes. Most importantly, it has helped improve the income level and living standard of many low-skilled workers, especially those in the B40 income group. By setting a legal wage floor, it has played a role in reducing poverty and inequality. Furthermore, the increase in wages has boosted workers' purchasing power, which will contribute to higher consumer spending and support the local economy. However, there are also several challenges on the impact of the minimum wage policy on low-skilled workers in Malaysia. Employers, especially small and medium-sized business, often struggle to cope with the increased wages cost. This can lead to job cuts, reduced hiring, or even the shift towards part-time or informal employment. In some cases, business may turn to automation to manage costs, which result in the displacement of low-skilled workers who lack the training to take on the new roles. We also observe broader implications for the labor market. Some companies might hire undocumented or foreign workers to avoid wage compliance. Yet, an inexperienced job seeker are at a disadvantage too, as employer may be hesitant to hire them at a higher wage rate. On top of that, wage comparison reduces the gap between low and semi-skilled jobs, which can discourage workers from pursuing further education or upskilling. At the national level, the policy also affects regional equity. For the example, a uniform national wage does not account for the cost of living differences between urban and rural areas. As a result, business in a less developed regions may face more difficulty, potentially leading to closure or relocation and worsening regional inequality. Therefore, while the minimum wage policy is well-intentioned and beneficial in many ways, it must be supported by additional strategy. These include targeted skill training, wage support mechanism, and regional flexibility. By combining these efforts, we can protect vulnerable workers and promote sustainable economic growth. Okay, that's all from me. Thank you very much for your time and attention. Thank you.